Prosperity. Having happy, healthy hours to do more of what we want. Moving beyond making money to making time and spending those happy hours as we choose. Let's take a closer look. This is Prosperity and Something Greater. My guest today, Landon Ray, is the CEO and co-founder of Ontraport. Ontraport is a company we've used at Top Practices for at least a decade now to run our marketing and outreach. You'll hear Landon share how he came up with the idea out of necessity and started the company with, as he describes it, 3 guys hunkered down in a yurt with a spotty internet connection in Santa Barbara, California, to build a software that he needed to run his startup. Well, realizing what he had in this software, he gave the other company to his friends and focused on what ultimately became today's Ontraport. This episode is not only filled with information, it's fun, as you are about to discover. Landon Ray. Okay, well, welcome, Landon Ray. It is an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. As I told everybody, we've been users from Ontraport many iterations back when it had, different names like Send Pepper and Office Autopilot. And we've been through the whole evolution of the platform that you've become, and have really so profited from it and benefited from it. And so have all of our doctors who also use it. Been to Ontrapalooza a couple of times, heard you speak. As I was telling you just before we really kicked this off, you'd done a movie a few years ago with Seth Godin that also, and some of your folks that had been just tremendous story. And at the time I thought, wow, of all the people, there's just many people you could talk to about this concept of what constitutes prosperity. And I really wanted to talk to you about it based on what I've gotten to know of you as a business person and an individual through just being an Ontraport customer. So thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ron. I'm glad to do it.
So let's just jump into it. How do you define prosperity for you?
Oh, let's see. Prosperity for me, I think it's got to come down to how we're able to spend our time, right? I guess most people think about prosperity, in terms of money, I suppose. Like that's kind of what probably if you looked up the definition, that's what it would be. But I don't know. I think that once you figure out how to make a little money in life, you realize that that's actually not the most important thing. It's really that you can always kind of make more money, but you don't ever get more time. And so to me, it seems really clear at this point that, one is prosperous to the extent that you have happy, healthy hours to do what you want with them. Being able to be in control of that super finite resource that we all have, and to have those hours be spent doing what you love or doing what you're into, and to have them be healthy and happy. That's got to be it, right?
I sure think so. And so do so many people I talk to about it. People that listen to the podcast know that every morning when I wake up, the first thing I do is smile. It's become a big habit, and it's just a small smile. But that smile means a lot. That smile means stuff happened.
Made it another day.
Yeah, I'm here. I
made it another morning.
Hey, how about that one? Lucky me. Exactly. But it also reminds me of all the blessings that, they're in my life, all the riches that I have in so many ways, not the least of which is the woman beside me, my wife, and our little dog, and the fact that I live in Las Vegas and I open up the blinds and the sun is gorgeous every day. And I have a good way to serve people that takes care of my family and I. And I've basically come up with a goal. I have one goal every day, and that's to have the best day I can have. And it's the number one thing. So no matter what happens, that is secondary to enjoying my hours and my day, like you just said. So I could not agree with you more. I couldn't. Landon, it's possible that many people maybe who don't know you don't really know, your story. And I'm just curious, maybe you could share with us sort of that defining moment or how you really ended up being the CEO and founder of a great big company that's it's more than I think it's more than a customer relationship management system. It's a marketing it's a management platform. How did that all happen?
Mm-hmm. Well, it is a long story now. We've been at this for 15 years. So let's see. I've had a bit of an interesting career. I've kind of had two careers, really, if you don't count, all the tables I waited and stuff, flowers I sold at the farmer's market back in the day and stuff like that. But the first kind of real moment I think that changed things for me was, and I don't remember like a specific moment, but I do remember around when I turned 25 years old, I had a sort of, existential panic attack about like what the hell I was doing with my life. Up till then I'd been doing a lot of skiing and playing in bands and hanging around, doing nothing. And all of a sudden it felt real important. Like, I got to get serious. I better do something. I better get serious about this because, I guess I had a sense that I grew up in Silicon Valley or the other side of the hill there, Half Moon Bay, California. And I had a sense that there was a lot of innovation taking place at the time. Yahoo was a new company. Apple was, just coming out with the, those Apple IIe or whatever it was. And I had a sense that, we were in a sort of the beginning of a renaissance in a certain sense, and that I had no piece of it. I had dropped out of college to go traveling with this girl, and I wasn't an engineer. I didn't have those skills. I didn't have, any real access to being a part of this thing that I felt like was happening obviously around me. And so I started to get a little panicky about that, and I started to read a lot, and I ended up seeing a cover story in Inc. magazine about these two guys. I don't remember their first names, but I remember their last names was Block. They were the Block brothers, and they had sort of discovered this system called SOES, S-O-E-S, that the NASDAQ stock market had put together after the crash of '89 that allowed small investors to trade on their own, put in their own orders. Small order execution system is what it was short for. They basically invented what became day trading, like public day trading. And so I read about their success and got all excited about it and actually ended up making a big move. And I moved to New York and ended up, kind of getting some money together from my family, my dad, and, a little bit of money, started to learn how to trade several years before everybody else did. And that turned out to be a good move. By the time, day trading became a real phenomenon in the late 90s, I had already been doing that a couple of years, and I was real prepared to take advantage of that moment. And I ended up making a lot of money as a young man. I made several $1 million before I was 30. And that gave me a lot of flexibility and a lot of, kind of gives you a lot of opportunity. It wasn't enough money to just retire on and go sail off into the sunset, but it was enough to really be able to take some time and plot my next move, which I did. I traded for about 5 years until the bubble popped in about 2001 or two, something like that. And then I took a couple of years off and bought a piece of property here in Santa Barbara and worked on that for a bit while I thought about my next move. And I ended up starting a business. We had this idea that I'll skip, but it was an interesting idea. He was a kind of a webmaster guy, and I wasn't, but I had some money. And so we got into business together, and I did what you do. I started to just figure stuff out, read books and went to conferences. I just, since he was going to be the tech guy, I was going to be the sales and marketing guy. And I learned about Dan Kennedy and started to go to his conferences and learned about marketing and started to put those ideas into place. This was now probably 2004, 2005. And real quickly realized that the ideas that he was teaching, which were, really traditional direct response marketing concepts that had been in use since well before there was an internet. I was taking those concepts and trying to apply them to online marketing, getting leads through the internet. And this was early days. I know it's only 15 years ago, but, we were there right as Google was launching their advertising platform. We were there before anybody knew what SEO even was. So yeah, I was trying to figure out how to get leads online, and just really quickly realized that the tools didn't really exist to do a good job at those traditional direct response strategies. So we started to build them internally for our own business, and pretty quick I was so excited about these tools that I kind of bumped my partner out of the way and was like, I'm going to take over this little engineering team we put together and start focusing on this platform. And before you knew it, I was more excited about these software tools that we were building than I was about the business we were building them for. At that point, I basically said, look, I'm not doing this business anymore. You can have it. I'm going to take this software that we're building and start my own thing, and talk to those guys that I'd been working on it with into coming and starting that business with me. They were just young guys. I'd hired them out of college, but now 15 years later, they're still here. They're our CTO and chief principal architect. They're, the co-founders of this thing, and we've been working together for all this time. And so, yeah, we brought that product initially. We started working on it full time in 2006 or 7, and brought it to market in 2008. Struggled a bit, a couple of years, kind of wrong market, wrong pricing. But in 2009, we kind of got our act together and really finally, just released what the market wanted, as opposed to what I thought they wanted, and what I wanted to give them. I was trying to teach, these pretty sophisticated concepts to a market that really just wanted leads, and so we kind of simplified it and put that out into the space, and it really took off all of a sudden. One day we kind of got it right, and in middle of 2009, and it just blew up. We went from having a couple dozen customers to having 1,000 customers, over the space of a couple of months. It was, and it's just been kind of on fire since then. It's been about a decade of that now, more, I guess. So yeah, I think that's the story.
That's interesting because, I was thinking about my own. I had a very slow start myself. It was just basically getting married that caused me to say, maybe I should start to take things a little bit seriously. It was quite a while.
Yeah.
I had a slow one, but I discovered Dan Kennedy in 2006. I was introduced to him by a friend of mine. When I first saw, his pictures and a little bit, I thought, who is this guy? I mean, because I was coming out of corporate America, and I thought, I don't get it. And then I started to realize, well, these guys have it actually figured out. Big companies I'd worked for were spending so much useless money when, this concept, basically magnetic marketing, right, is what it all started with.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Direct response. If there were no Dan Kennedy, there would need no Top Practices, my company. And so that's very interesting to me. And, Ontraport so fits into just an information-based marketing. I mean, it's as if you designed it for the kind of marketing that we do.
Well, that's right, because it was designed for the Dan Kennedy model. I mean, that's where I learned sales and marketing. So that makes perfect sense.
That's where I learned good sales and marketing. Before that, there was a little bit that was pretty nice. We had offices at Sierra Point, which is just there in South San Francisco. And I used to feel like we would take giant pallets of $100 bills and go out with flamethrowers and just burn them. So that's how I learned a lot of marketing stuff corporately, and it wasn't good. Well, let me shift gears a little bit. Let's go back to this idea about prosperity and as it relates to you and what you were talking about. So all of us, we all have challenges. We all have obstacles that we face every single day. What do you deal with on your daily journey? What can trip you up?
Oh, I think probably the thing I struggle with the most is probably like overwhelm. We're a middle-sized business. We're not a big business. We do pretty well, but we're 120 people or so. And that's an interesting size of a business to be. It's like big enough that you've got a bunch of people doing a lot of different projects, but also small enough that, I end up having my fingers in a lot of them, and I still run big chunks of this business. So yeah, I think my to-do list gets pretty out of hand. Gets a little frustrating because I feel like I end up being a blocker sometimes, like I'm the guy holding up projects, which is not what I want to be, since I'm also paying the salaries of all these people that are trying to move the ball forward for me. It's probably complicated by having a lot of ideas. I'm constantly adding to the list, and new ideas, new projects, new inspirations, and it's easy to get caught up in switching rather than completing, if you know what I mean. jumping from one thing to the next rather than seeing something all the way through and actually like nailing it down, which is really the smarter thing to do, because 10 half-done projects is not as good as one completed one.
Yeah, shiny bright object syndrome can be something that entrepreneurs and builders and creators struggle from. It's also really important, so I'm not surprised, actually, just having observed you and listened to you. You're always so candid about how things are with you. I'm not surprised that that's something that you face. So what are some of the top strategies that you try to use to help you as you go forward?
Well, the way that I manage that challenge, I think, is in a few different ways. First of all, I'm big into lists, right? So I think I get more easily distracted when stuff is in my head.
Sure.
And not, getting it down on paper and into some like out of my head format really helps to kind of like put it there. Another thing that I've done is to really try not to, I know that in the entrepreneurial world, there's this sort of preference towards, action, right? Like just start. And that, for me, that is my natural tendency, is to just go, I'll get an idea and before the day's out, I'll get three employees. I'm sending out messages and getting things going. And I think that for me at this point in my career, that's actually probably more of a hindrance than a help. I've learned to like, just put it on my list, let it marinate for a little bit, and see if I still like that idea a few days later, or even a few weeks later. And then I think lastly is really just using a calendar. I actually put my work into a calendar and then follow my calendar and don't allow myself to get distracted with the idea of the moment. Just put the idea of the moment on the list, and then come back to the list every couple of weeks and review it, prioritize it, so that I have that sort of satisfaction of knowing that I'm not losing these ideas, schedule the ones that I think need to get scheduled, but then really day to day, just follow the calendar and, do the work that's in front of me and really just learn how to say no more often, I think is my practice.
So Warren Buffett said, successful people say no to most things. Really successful people say no to almost everything, which I think is interesting. Me too. I struggle from the same things. I work from lists. Action plans actually is the primary tool that I use all the time. And it's an ancient, it's an idea from the 20s or whatever, but it's just a good list and who's going to get what. And I don't run any of them. Just the people in the organization do. So yeah, I am absolutely with you. And the calendar, well, a time blocking your time and saying that's what I'm doing now. That is what I can see, and all that I've read is more correlated to success than really any other activity that someone running anything can do, is to block your time and then have integrity to that block that you put there. So Landon, a couple more questions for you before I let you get back to all this. The people that are listening to this they're interested in their own version of prosperity and building that and achieving it. Beyond what you've already done, any advice that you could share with people as they're just trying to find their way?
Yeah, well, I think that, your first question really begins to get at the heart of it, right? Like, you need to know what prosperity looks like for yourself. And I think that the sort of cultural agreement that we have that prosperity, that, money equals prosperity is worth reviewing for all of us. And, maybe asking why is money so important, right? I know that for myself, I like nice things and comforts and, as much as anybody. But I think that, having like looked at my own financial drive has made me realize that it's really comes from sort of a fear of insecurity, right? Like I'm afraid my kids aren't going to have food or something like that. And that's, driven a lot of decisions that have kept me, hustling in ways that aren't really always getting me what I really, really want, right? Because look, reality is my kids are not going to run out of food. You know what I mean? So that fear is irrational, right? And a lot of the reasons that some of us chase what we call prosperity are going to turn out to be irrational if we look at them, right? I want to look good to my neighbors. Well, you know what? Your neighbors don't give a shit about your car. They care about how happy you are, or how interesting you are, or what a good person you are, right? And so if relationships are what you're after, I can guarantee you that money just makes that complicated and weird. So that's not going to help. If you think prosperity is money, then I'd spend some time getting clear on what's underneath that for you and whether or not there's a faster way to achieve that goal or a better way to achieve that underlying goal than getting money. And then if you figure out that it's not money, then gosh, I think that almost everything else is easier, right? Almost everything else is easier.
I agree. And, I think so many of us are really motivated by fear. I mean, I know there was a time in my life I was too. And those folks that seem to have found something have really moved past it. I heard a great definition of fear, FEAR, false events appearing real. Like 99% of things you worry about never happen. There's not going to be a terrorist group move in beside your house. It's more likely you're going to slip on the stairs. Stairs are murdering psychopaths. I mean, they kill a lot of people every year, and we're not afraid of them. Those bathroom fixtures, people slipping and they die on their toilet. They're just hitting their head. So, yeah, it's not going to be what you think. So why spend your day that way? Landon, I've been asking a question of everybody that is a fun one, and it's this. If you were a toy, what toy would you be and why? Right.
That is a funny question. For some reason, I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at with that, but for some reason, a Rubik's Cube came to mind. I think it's maybe because it's just colorful and has a lot of sharp edges. Also complicated, frustrating to a lot of people. I think that describes me. I'm not sure. Maybe I'd be Buzz Lightyear, fly around, save the world, stuff like that.
No one said that yet. That's a great one. That's a great answer. It's fun. And I'll tell you, after having, asked this question of many, many people, I mean, I think there's almost a small book in the answer. So no, I love that. And I think that's great. Really good. 2 more questions for you. The first one is, any book that you would recommend that you think is just worthwhile that anybody that's listening should pick up and read?
Yeah, sure. This is a podcast about prosperity, which sounds to me like, getting your priorities straight and getting your life right. And I always think about Clayton Christensen's book, How to Measure Your Life. He's unfortunately passed away last year, too early. He was a brilliant guy, a Harvard Business School professor who wrote a bunch of books, all of which are amazing. Another great one, if you're into business, is his book, Competing Against Luck, which is, I think, a must read. In terms of, How to Measure Your Life was not so much a business book. It came from a series of lectures he gave to his Harvard students, I guess about getting their priorities right and how to invest in yourself and your life in ways that are going to get you those things that really matter, more than just financial success. Definitely worth a read.
I do not know that book nor that author, and I am delighted to get that recommendation. I'll let you know after I read it. I think it sounds great.
Yes.
So it's like every time I interact with anybody who works in your company in any way, whether they're helping us solve a problem or, I've met the president of your company and I've met other folks there, certainly at your meetings, and everybody just seems to really like what they do. They seem to be part of the mission and they're happy. I'd have to say they're happy in their work. How do you do that? I mean, what do you think that is in your, because you're the leader?
Yeah. Well, that's a bit of a longer conversation. I will say that I think, I hope anyway, that is the effect of a lot of work that we put in over the course and a lot of thinking that we put into that. Because from the very start of this company, to be honest, we have a sort of strategic belief that those companies that deliver the most remarkable experiences, customer experiences, will be the winners of the future. And that's actually, distinct from the past, where the winners were those companies that had bigger sales and marketing teams or, created monopolies for themselves like Cox Cable or whatever it might be, right? Those companies that already won, those ones, Verizon, the ones that you don't ever want to interact with. Those are old companies that didn't win because they were creating remarkable experiences. They won for some other reason, right? But in the future, now that we have the social internet and and word travels lightning fast, is different now. Now, companies that actually deliver the most remarkable experiences can win and usually do win. And if that's true, it really behooves you to think about, well, how do we deliver remarkable experiences, right? Like if that's what it takes to win, then what is that, right? And part of it is obviously our software. So we're a software company. And so the software's got to be good. But also, doing business online is complicated. And so we know that a big part of the sort of Ontraport ownership experience is engaging with our team, asking questions, getting those questions answered, bringing up a problem and going like, how do you solve that problem using these tools? And if that experience that you have engaging with our team isn't remarkable, then the whole thing is going to suck, right? Like we really think of the software as half of what we do, and the experience around the software is the other half. And so when we thought about how do we deliver remarkable experiences through people, like it's easy when it's me, right? Like, because this is my baby and my life depends on it. And of course I'm going to be the guy who delivers a remarkable experience. But when I go hire 100 people, like how do I get them to care, right? How do I get them to give a damn and also deliver that experience? And that question is something that we began to ask very early on, because we realized from the beginning that was going to determine whether we were successful or not. And so we did ask that question, and we came up with a lot of different answers. And we think that we have gotten a lot of things right about what makes people care about their work. I mean, look, if you call up Cox Cable or Verizon or United Airlines or whatever it is, like in a tenth of a second, whether that person hates their life or not, right? And whether they hate their job really determines a lot about the experience that you have interacting with them, right? If they care about what they're doing and are happy to talk to you, that's like 90% of the battle, isn't it? So how do we have people care about what they're doing and like being at work? And it's an important question. Like, look, if you're going to try and hire the best people to support you in your mission, you got to think about what the best people are looking for, because the best people can have any job they want, right? Any one of the people that work for Ontraport could go get 100 other jobs tomorrow. Nobody works for us because they have to. And so when you think about that, well, it's, what is it those people are looking for? Well, I think you can start to identify those things, right? One of the first things is they want their work, which is like half our waking life, right? They're spending half of their waking lives on some project, and they've got to feel like that work is moving forward a mission that matters. Yeah. Like the work is worth it, right? If the work is just to make the boss rich, or if it's to scam some people out of their money, or if it's to, move papers from column A to column B or whatever it is, like that's not worth the resource that their life is, right? And so really, making sure that you start a business that does matter, right? Like it's going to be hard to have happy people in shitty jobs. Don't create shitty jobs. You know what I mean? Like you got to design your business for this. So that's one thing, is have a mission that matters, talk about it, make sure it's clear, make sure that the team understands the difference that they're making. That's another thing that people want, is to see that their efforts actually make a difference, right? If you're in accounting, it's really hard sometimes to see how the work that you're doing, running Excel spreadsheets or whatever it is, really impacts the lives of the people who we work for. And so we work hard to bring that to the forefront in our team meetings. We have all team meetings every week. We tell stories, customer stories, stuff that our customers have written in about how we've changed, testimonials, basically, how we've changed their lives, how we've helped them succeed, how that's mattered to them and their customers. Great people want to have opportunities to grow and to take responsibility. And so it's incumbent upon leaders, I think, to provide that, right? You're not going to have great people happy at jobs where they're stagnant. You're just not. And so you need to build that into the model. At Ontraport, we have a ton of ways that we do that. We, everything from sponsoring any book or any course or any education we pay for, anything they want to do, to whether, anything they want to do for self-improvement. We have an internal apprenticeship program. So if people want to, get into marketing or get into sales or get into engineering, we have an apprenticeship program where people can go do that. And if they like it, they can apply for those jobs. Much of our company is staffed by people who once were support reps or whatever, who have grown and become, professionals in other areas. So, that's just three areas. There's a bunch more that we have done pretty methodically to make sure people love their jobs so that they do feel inspired to create that experience. But I think maybe at the bottom, the bottom line, or at the end of the day, you might say that really you need to be thinking about that, right? Like you need to be thinking about what makes people happy in their work, and then to do that, right? Because I think it's worth remembering that the money that you're paying somebody is never, ever going to be remotely enough to sort of pay for the, taking away their most precious resource, right? Like you can't pay enough money to eat up somebody else's time. That's their life bars, man. And they only get a certain number. That shit is way more precious than your dollars. And so you need to just appreciate that, be grateful that the people that are on your team are agreeing to be on your team, and look at all the different ways that, you can support the team in achieving their goals other than simply paying their paycheck, which is, really just the very, very bare minimum of what you do as an employer.
Thanks for spending time and going into that. I mean, it's evident to me that you guys have spent a lot of time and effort working on that. And I've seen it. And so, and I know our doctors, those folks that we work with are always, staffing. It's just the number one question always coming up, problems with staff issues here and there. And thank you for that. I think it's just great. Landon, and thank you for doing this today. I've been looking forward to this, and this has been a lot of fun talking to you about what I think is a very interesting, nuanced, and when I started this, I did look at what the definitions of prosperity were, and it's funny. And I go back and listen to the first episode, and where I was trying to frame all of this, and now that is so far in the rearview mirror after having gone through a journey of speaking to so many people like yourselves, and it always comes down to everybody has a different take, a little look at it, but it's very much about what we're talking about is how do you become happy, and it's never money. Not once has anybody ever said money, but yeah, I talked to have sorted out the money thing as a rule. So they also know that they could lose it and it wouldn't matter because just make it again. So listen, thank you. Have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. Maybe we'll talk again sometime. I'd love that.
Appreciate the invitation, Rem, and thanks for having me on and for listening.
Well, it's been great. How do you spend your time? Do you, as so many do, say you value time with your loved ones more than anything, but when pressed, you would have to admit that they are not actually your top priority, sometimes as low as third. And again, not what you say or believe, but what in practice you reveal. And I've come to know that we all can make them first and use your talents and skills to truly make them first. It's tools like Ontraport, powerful tools and strategies that help us get there. And it's really where we spend much of our time in our top practices coaching programs. For me, there's just no other way. Let me know what you think. You can send me an email at rem@toppractices.com. Prosperity is the entire focus of Top Practices. Most doctors are struggling with the business of medicine, and those that aren't truly understand that through association with other successful practitioners, they can take their practice to the next level or something greater, like prosperity. Prosperity in business is a function of mindset, marketing, and management. And that is our mission at Top Practices. You can find out more about Top Practices, our marketing and management programs for doctors, our workshops and annual summits at toppractices.com. Until next time, this is Rem Jackson. Smile when you wake up and then have a really great day. Your best day ever. Nothing is more important.